Well, hello and welcome to the Astrology Hub Podcast. I am so happy that you have decided to join us today for this deep dive on Sabian symbols. Now, if you don't know what that is, you are absolutely in the right place because we are going to learn all about it. And if you do know what it is, you're also in the right place because you're going to add some layers and nuance to your understanding that you can bring into your chart interpretations. Before I introduce our guest today, I would like to take a moment to thank you. Your presence, curiosity, and enthusiasm for astrology is what enables us to continue producing this show now in our 7th year. I know from personal experience what a game changer astrology can be. And so I'm honored to be able to share its wisdom with you, to be able to introduce you to some of the best astrologers in the entire world. And I just want to thank you for making this possible. Today's guest is Cassandra Joan Butler, and she is making her Astrology Hub podcast debut. We went to the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles in February, and we did a little meet and greet for our Inner Circle members and any Astrology Hub community members who were at that event. Cassandra joined us for that meet and greet. And I will never forget, we were sitting around in a circle in the sunshine. It was such a beautiful gathering. And Cassandra was talking to us about the role of Chiron in the upcoming eclipse, which I'm referring to those big eclipses that we've had this year. And she had so much wisdom to share. And she was so compassionate. And there was just so much in her interpretation of Chiron's role. And so we got to talking after. And then we looked her up online after and realized that she is a very accomplished astrologer. And so now we're so excited to be introducing her to you. She's going to be an Inner Circle astrologer coming up February of 2025. So we have a lot more time to get to know Cassandra, but she will be joining us in the Inner Circle. And today we're going to be doing this deep dive on Sabian symbols. So Cassandra, welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you. I am so excited. That was a really wonderful expo, wasn't it? I mean, we go to those gatherings to meet like-minded people. It was a new moon in Aquarius, as I recall. And it was just such a delight to hang out with you all because I felt totally at home. And I'm so appreciative of everything Astrology Hub is doing. It's been 7 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's almost 10 years since Astrology Hub was started, but the podcast started about 7 years ago. So yeah.
Okay.
And it's just so great to be able to meet you in person. I love having that personal interaction with you. So since this is your debut, we always start with the story. How did you get into astrology? It's a very unique career path, a very unique life path. So how did you stumble into it? And just tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, sure. Kind of kicking and screaming, Amanda, to be honest. I came from a very, middle-class American household. But I think I was very blessed because living in Buffalo, New York, being raised in Buffalo, we are only an hour away from the worldwide center of spiritualism called Lilydale. So that's where the psychics, the mediums gather every summer, and stellar speakers from around the world gather, the likes of Deepak Chopra. I can go on and on, but nevertheless, I was raised with this very polarizing but integrated look at religion and spirituality. I mean, my mom was an Aquarius. She said, hey, let's just play some tarot cards and then we'll play pinochle, So it was a very relaxed type of household. But I was precocious enough I grew up in the 60s. I was precocious enough to hit on, and a lot of people have, the Linda Goodman books, the sun sign astrology.
Yeah.
And so I'd read that and enjoy it and talk about it with my friends. It was the 60s. People, what's your sign? But I really came out of the A closet in 1987. And there was a series of events. I went to college and grad school, and all the time that I was working and doing my social work and my communications work, I would have my ephemeris. That's that thing that we don't use anymore. That big book of changes. But In 1987, I had a double whammy. I had a Saturn return and Pluto was on top of my sun. Now, astrologers are going to understand what a big double whammy that is. But I felt called into cutting my teeth on taking the risk and serving using astrology. I had, when I was in the communications field, I actually interviewed an engineer turn astrologer. And he was on my radio show. And I'll never forget this. He took a look at my chart. He identified something that happened when I was 10 years old. And it wasn't terrible or anything. It was just a question of my integrity versus the teacher's integrity, but I was really in the right. He was identifying that for me, but he was also into Sabian symbols. And I respected him right out of the ballpark because he's a brilliant engineer. He knows, extreme mathematics, which I always kind of struggled with. So in any case, he said, you're not going to be doing this work like this at all. You may be going into more of a spiritual deep dive. Again, Pluto on top of my sun, Saturn return. So that's the short of it. I started writing a column in Buffalo, New York for the local newspaper. And I also used the power of, I guess you would say, affirmations. I'd write my journal. I would like to be an astrologer this year. I didn't know what that meant. But when I was invited to write, then I started to cultivate a client group, some of which I'm now reading for their kids. So it was a long time. But I've done other things. I've put my hands and my work into college teaching and doing healing work. But astrology is always my mainstay, Amanda. It's a gift to the world, as I can see.
And why Sabian symbols? Like, why did that call to you specifically?
Yeah, specifically, again, this engineer had memorized all of them. I'm not that proficient.
Yeah, why was the engineer into Sabian symbols? That's really an interesting combination.
Isn't it an interesting combination? I think because the people who brought the symbols to humanity, one, Mark Edmond Jones, astrologer, minister, musician, one, Elsie Wheeler, who was a medium. She was a clairvoyant medium, and she was very limited. She was crippled. She had rheumatoid arthritis. She couldn't leave her wheelchair, but her mind and her imagination and her love of people was so fierce. She really wanted to help. Well, when I got into it, I realized that Elsie Wheeler's sun sign was the same Sabian symbol as my moon sign. So right away, I felt an affinity to the mother of Sabian symbols. So that's one small reason. And also, I love the idea of using astrology and mediumistically derived symbols. So there's a little bit of an esoteric feeling with the Sabians. And they're also accessible to everyone. So I'm sure you found this. This is why I'm so appreciative of Astrology Hub. People sometimes want to learn astrology. At first, there's this pushback because it's complicated. But everybody can take a look at their chart and see the numbers and then do an interpretation.
So you feel the Sabian symbols are an easy entry point to being able to begin to interpret your chart?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's go to this question then. What are the Sabian symbols? What are they? What do they represent? How can they add layer to our interpretations of who we are, why we're here, and also transits? When different things are happening, how can we get insights from them?
Sure. So think of our beautiful mandala of the astrological wheel. It is a wheel, 360 degrees. And so every one of those numbers has a Sabian symbol or word picture attached to them. And how they were derived were from the union and collaboration of Mark Edmond Jones and Elsie Wheeler. They meditated, they prayed, they went into a little conclave of Balboa Park outside of San Diego. And this is the coolest thing. Imagine this, 360 slips of paper with numbers on the back. Elsie is closing her eyes, and then she's holding each piece of paper in her hands, and she's connecting with, some people call the Sabian people, the original astrologers from the Middle East, or one group. Yeah, she was saying that she was calling them the esoteric brothers of another dimension. So this woman was channeling these word pictures, and some of them are beautiful, and some of them are challenging and not that pretty. But when you put them all together into a 360 wheel, there's a patterning with them. They were totally randomly selected. And so to me, that catches my attention because there's this mystical, mediumistic manner by which they were given to us, humanity. Now, they're not the first degree astrology, by the way. Mark Edmond Jones in 1925, when they were sitting there with his cohort, Elsie, he was thinking, I would like to contribute to astrology. And there was another Welsh seer, psychic from Wales, named John Thomas. And he was playing around with word pictures for each of the 360 degrees. You have to remember the climate of the late 19th century, early 20th century. There was a lot of mysticism, theosophists, occult underpinnings. Maybe it would have gone so great. Well, maybe, I don't know. I think we're in that same type of climate with Neptune in Pisces. But in any case, they came up with these. And so, friends, please think of each symbol is a symbol, just like you take a look at a piece of art. It's a symbol. It's a word picture. And you really can't capture them in a definitive way. If I say a word picture, I've got some symbols here. If I say game birds feathering their nests, well, that's going to evoke a picture for Amanda, which is very different than my picture. I mean, there's different types of birds in Hawaii, right? And certainly in Buffalo. So that's how they are. And they're very useful for us because it can help us see themes and narratives in our charts. When you look at the 360 word pictures, I've done a lot of work with this, and I put them into patterns. So there's patterns of spirituality, patterns of transformation, patterns of health, of relationship, of career. And it's kind of my interpretation of all of them. And that's what I want to share with everyone at Astrology Hub. So
Amazing. Okay. So let me make sure I understand this. There's 360 degrees in the circle, the wheel that we look at in astrology. Each one of those degrees, they basically downloaded or channeled a visual depiction of the degree and what the degree represents. It's not a definitive thing. It's not, here's your definition. It's a picture that is meant to be interpreted. Correct?
Correct. And what's really cool is because they had no idea. I mean, Elsie, from what I've read and researched, had no idea. She just had the slice of paper, and then she would write the image down. This took hours and hours and hours. And she was just using her imagination. She didn't know whether or not she was doing it for, 0 degrees of Aries. She had no idea. So there's a randomness about this. And she's implied, and so is Mark Edmond Jones and Dane Rudyard, who's all part of this mix, that there was a spiritual guidance at hand. It wasn't just her. She was downloading and relying on the Sabian people.
Wow.
Who are guiding her.
And so have you found, it's interesting because there's several different things in astrology that have been channeled, or several different types of like even evolutionary astrology, right? Like that whole approach to astrology was basically downloaded. Yes. I mean, it was, and okay. My question is, and then there's very respected and well-researched and very intelligent astrologers who've been applying and testing and making sure that these theories actually are true and they work and they resonate and they help people, they help people understand who they are and why they're here. And so what has been your experience with Sabian symbols? How do you use it to help you when you're in a reading with a client, or when you're trying to understand something about yourself, or when you're looking at the transits? How does this help you? And have you found it to be accurate?
Mm-hmm. Oh, countless examples. For example, there's a degree called the deep sea diver, and that is 4 degrees of Scorpio. Oh, one more thing, one more little nugget of understanding before people start looking at the degrees on their chart. We don't have a degree for 0. So at 0 of anything in the chart, that gets rounded up to the next degree. So if you're looking at your chart and you see the number 5 on your chart, you're going to round that up to 6, because it's always 5 degrees and whatever minutes.
Okay,
right?
So definitely note that. And I remember Rick Levine saying that recently on one of our podcasts. And I went, oh, shoot, does everybody know that? Because that seems like a really important nuance. So if you have 4 degrees of something, it's the 5 degree on the Sabian symbol.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
So you would read the next degree over. And so, for example, this person who had a deep sea diver, and he had not just 1, but 2 of his planets next. First of all, if I see on any wheel or a transit, especially a transit, I want to look at the Sabian symbol for the transit. And for the natal chart, I want to look at that as well. It's emphasizing a degree when you have a stellium. You have two planets next to each other. But this individual, he wasn't a scuba diver. He was a psychotherapist. And he was always doing a deep sea dive. And we know that the idea of the water or the sea is very much associated with psychology, right? Even Neptune with its trident represents the idea of the unconscious. I'm happy to say, well, of course, the first thing I did was do my chart. And the only planet that is of strong note, I've got asteroids, of course, but the only planet of note in my 10th house is Uranus, and its Sabian symbol is constellations in the sky. So, wow, right?
And you're an astrologer. That's your career.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would recommend, of course, people to look at all of the main planets, but it has great narrative features. That's what the Sabian symbols do. Is there a theme or a story that the symbols reflect when you look at them in whole? And so that's one way and device. I use them. Whenever I do a reading, I integrate a lot of things. Of course, I call them integrative readings. So I might take a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And what's cool about the Sabian symbols, people understand I'm reading a degree that's not mysterious. If I say something is squaring something else and they're new to astrology, they might wonder about it. I said, well, you can check this out yourself. Now, of course, in these days, you can Google anything. So again, there's wonderful websites out there which have wonderful astrologers that list all the degrees and also plot their definition of each of the degrees as well, using the Sabian symbols.
Amazing. I would love to have you give us an example of, like, if you sat down and looked at someone's chart and you saw a Sabian symbol for their sun sign, for example, would you just look at the Sabian symbol, connect with the imagery, and then ask them questions to see if it's like, how do you do it? How do you actually bring it into your reading?
Okay, sure. I mean, I have done these types of readings where I just use the Sabian symbols.
Wow.
Okay, so that's fun. But if something is cut and dry, for example, a dentist at work is one of the symbols. And I might say, oh, by the way, have you ever worked in the dental field? And that has actually rang true. A dental hygienist was indeed I think it was her Mercury, a dentist at work. Now, you can interpret that in other levels, right? Because she was very precise with her words. She didn't just do dental hygiene. She was very meticulous with how she would communicate with her Mercury, right? So not every degree necessarily is going to ring bingo when we're reading someone. But if you look at the totality of the symbols, there's often a theme. There's either a theme like of reconstruction or creativity or human emotions. That is fun. You have to kind of look at all the degrees.
I want to understand a little bit more about who Mark Edmond Jones is, Jane
Sure.
Rudier, just in case people don't know. Before I do that,
Sure.
I want to make sure everybody knows about a fun, free thing that we're doing. When you sign up for the Cosmic Insider, which is our free weekly newsletter, you are going to be entered into a raffle to win things like a year of membership in the Inner Circle, mastery classes, courses, different things we offer at Astrology Hub. And if you are not yet on our mailing list for that, you can get on there now. Go to astrologyhub.com/insider. If you're already on it, you are already entered into the raffle. So we're going to be choosing a winner each month. So you can be listening for that. We'll be announcing it on the podcast and also in the Insider itself. But the Cosmic Insider gives you weekly tips and highlights of the astrology ahead for the week, stories and things to help the astrology come to life, plus exclusive offers that only insiders get. So check that out, astrologyhub.com/insider. Okay. Now,
awesome.
Who is Mark Edmond Jones? Who is Jane Rudier? Who is even Elsie Wheeler? But
Sure.
anyways, yeah, for people that don't know, because we hear these names a lot, but I don't know that everybody knows who they
are. Mark Edmond Jones was a very Renaissance man. He started his career wanting to be a playwright, and he went to Hollywood. And I understand he did have some of his work published, maybe not into big films, but he was a good writer. And over the course of his life, he discovered astrology, or astrology discovered him. And he integrated this astrology with a lot of divination, spirituality, and so forth. He became a minister. And if you've ever looked at your chart and you've seen what we would call the themes or the construction of the chart, he came up with a series of books, and they're still available. Like, for example, the bucket pattern, the kite. He's the one who interpreted these, friends, so many years ago in the late 19th century, early 20th century. So he was a very prolific writer. He actually founded the Sabian Society, of which, I was a member for a while. I was very much into that about 15 years ago. Post-COVID, I don't think they've had any conferences, but there's a Sabian Society. You can register online. Whoa. And they bring in a lot of esoteric, old-fashioned theosophy in their conferences. And they talk about the messages behind the Sabian symbol, as their symbols. And it's all about connecting with spirit, the God of your understanding, as it were. So he was quite the character. Elsie Wheeler was one of his students. Because he was a spiritualist, she was also learning how to connect with people who have been deceased and other beings. But she was quite the sincere-hearted person. He had this idea of sitting in meditation and prayer to get these symbols for a while, and there was competitions. It's really interesting. Zoe Wells was a very established artist. She also wanted to work with him, but she already had a strong reputation. In fact, if you ever have played with the tarot cards, you've looked at Zoe Wells' illustrations, friends, because she was the one who did the writer deck. She illustrated those. Okay. Yeah. So there was a group of people who were, I guess, spiritualists in that turn of the century. They all kind of knew each other. And Dane Rudyard, again, prolific Renaissance man, he really started the humanistic phase of astrology, cycles in astrology, and also an established musician. You can go online and listen to his very avant-garde music. And again, this is the California sect of astrologers. They were extremely influential. It's hard to even imagine nowadays because we live in such a different era with so many personalities, so many different people, but they were the go-to people with astrology at that time. So please, I would suggest anyone take a look at the roots of astrology and check those two people out, especially Dane Rudhyar, who is friendly with Mark Edmond Jones. When Mark Edmond Jones did the transcription for Elsie, he had them on these mimeographed sheets. And in those days, you know how we learned astrology? Not in circles online, but in circles at home. So he would have at-home circles, and he would pass along these monographs, and people would learn and share and establish rapport with each other. Dane Rudhyar took a look at these and he said, "Oh, these are really impressive." And he published his own book, which you can get. My books are so ratty because, I've been using them forever. So for the occasion of doing this, I sent for brand new copies, so I can't wait. They're very accessible. These originals.
So what are, if people are going to get the quintessential books on Sabian symbols, what are the ones that they should get?
Yep. I would start with the Sabian Symbols in Astrology by Dr. Mark, with a C, Edmond Jones, M-A-R-C, Edmond Jones. Wonderful book. Dane Rudhyar wrote The Astrological Mandala, and some of his symbols are slightly different than Mark Edmond Jones's. I mean, remember, we're talking about 1925, and some of the language of some of the symbols might even seem offensive to our 2024 ears, to be honest with you. Like one of them is a young Negro woman is screaming for her rights.
Whoa.
All right. And we would say Black, of course, or maybe an African American or a person of color now, but there's different kind of deep type of 19th century lingo. So those two books I would start with, and a beautiful translation of them, keeping to the original meaning, is a wonderful astrologer from Australia, Linda Hill, and it's Linda with a Y. I had a chance to meet up with her, I think in, I don't know what year, one of the big conferences. And she wrote 360 Degrees of Wisdom. And so she's a really great source for people as well.
Okay. Are there any planets that weigh more than others? Are there any aspects that, can you interpret aspects with this? Or is it really just, okay. So tell us if someone wants to look at their chart and really start to make sense of it, is there a natural place to start? Do you include asteroids and things like that? Mm-hmm. How do you prioritize or weigh what you're looking at?
Sure. I would always start with the big three: the sun, the moon, the rising sign, and see if you can make connections between those degrees. I'm going to dissect my own chart for a moment. All right. Okay. So my rising sign is from a person's vision is being crystallized. Okay. I think the originality was a man's vision is being crystallized, but I like to say a person's vision is being crystallized. And the same degree as Elsie Wheeler, the bride's veil has been snatched away. When I first knew that was my degree, I thought, I know I'm happily divorced. I truly am. I'm friendly with my ex-husband. But bride's veil snatched away, what does that mean? Well, there's a lot of veiled Sabian symbols. And veil suggests that person can often see beneath the veil, beyond the veil, with mediumistic or psychic awareness. So both of those degrees have that type of energy attached to them. So that's one of my narratives, visualization, making things happen, and going past the veil. And my sun sign is the gold rush. Like people always say I'm always rushing around, but that is a sense of an interpretation of going for the gold, going for what is essential. We're going for the purity of what's really real. So that's a theme with me. So look at their symbols. You have to have a generous interpretive mind when you look at them. They're like dream fragments. I like to call them dream fragments, right? But again, I've done a lot of work with them, analyzing them. There's a lot of the symbols refer to butterflies and birds. So then that would trigger messengers, Gemini, right? Ideas of getting messages. So it's a vast undertaking, but what I love about astrology is that we have so many different layers, but using this layer. Now you asked about aspects and things. Again, the layout of this book is very, very cool. And this is a complete coincidence. When Elsie was getting these degrees, she didn't know what degree she was looking at all. I'm just going to flip it open. And so one of the operative things that people who study these have found that degrees that are opposite to each other have a similar theme. So, for example, I just opened up randomly to Gemini 23, 3 fledglings in a nest high in a tree. Mark Edmond Jones says that keyword is elevation. Then the opposite, 23 Sagittarius, immigrants entering, just 2 words. And the key word is entrance. It's about a moving system, birds, people coming into a new arena. And so it goes. And the way this is structured in the book is you see the opposition between 2 planets. So if you were to look at a transit, I think Saturn's at 18 Pisces right now. You want to look at where's 18 degrees of Virgo right now. Neptune's right now, as we speak, is at 29 degrees of Pisces. So what's 29 degrees of Virgo? And so you could look at some threads of meaning.
But would you round up though? If it was 29, yep. you would round up.
Oh, if it's 29, then it goes to 30. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay, good. All right. So
absolutely.
Looking at the opposite to a degree helps you synthesize more depth in the storyline. Is that kind of what that does?
Yes. And see the yin and yang, or how to balance, whether it be a natal chart or an actual transit or an actual degree in our charts. A very easy way of using these Sabian symbols on a daily basis or yearly basis, monthly basis, is to look at your progressed chart. Because our progressed chart is always moving approximately, the moon is moving approximately 1 degree a month, every month. And I follow that. I take a look at, it's easy to do. Just look at your Sabian symbol book. Well, this month I'll be doing X, Y, and Z. It makes sense. The Sabian symbol is maybe a messenger degree. Maybe I'm doing more interviews or I'm doing more teaching. And then the next degree is a home degree. Children, here's a degree. Children are at the hospital playing with toys. That's a degree. And then that might be very relevant to me. I'm actually kind of reflecting on my own chart because I know it the best. So I have a grandchild. And when I had that degree for my moon, sure enough, I was spending a lot more time playing with the toys with my grandchild. So it's really fun to look at your own chart. It's a good tool. It makes you become aware. Progressions help a lot. They can also be used, Amanda, as an oracle. Now, what do I mean by that? I don't have one on my website yet. I'd like to. I'll look into that. People have oracles all the time, but you can make your own Sabian symbol cards. I will direct people on how to do that at some point. Very easy. You do the numbers, you do the signs, and what you can do is ask a question. Like I'll do one right now. I'll take my book. I'm going to ask a question about the weather in Buffalo. That's a pretty lame question since not everybody's in Buffalo, but a lot of people are dealing with heat. And what I turn to is an old bridge over a beautiful stream. And the word is conservation. A lot of people are talking about the extreme weather that we have to conserve a little bit more. We've had some blackouts here. So it's kind of interesting. So you can also use the Sabian symbols, getting your book, opening them up, creating little cards, and using them as an oracle.
I love it. Is this calling to you, everyone out there? I'm thinking that this is a great astrological tool for people that are perhaps more visual, more poetic, more artistic, where, like you talked about dream fragments. I love that those two words together. It's beautiful. People that like to interpret and add nuance. And so it's beautiful. And I love bringing in this oracle piece too, because I know a lot of people love to use tarot for that. And this is a great way to use astrology as an oracle tool. You are going to be our inner circle astrologer for the month of February in 2025. What are we going to, and then you're going to be teaching on Sabian symbols. What are we going to be learning? How are we going to be able to take this information and start to apply it and use it?
Well, for one thing, I'll definitely share a lot of my research over the years about how to pattern these degrees and how you can apply this patterning for your own chart, for your own understanding. Number one. Number two, how to use them in a practical way, the Sabian symbols, on a daily basis as part of your meditation. And synchronize them also with your progressed chart, and how to activate them during particular important aspects during your life. We can also look at all the planets, of course, all the major planets. Another way of using the Sabian symbols, which I'll be helping people understand, is a rectification for your chart. A lot of people aren't quite sure, right? Yes. Oh, it's 4:16. No, it's 4:18 a.m. Well, I rectified my own chart. I mean, on my birth certificate, it says 4:15 in the morning. But when I saw that degree, 4:15 in the morning, translates to the degree of the person who's crystallizing her inner vision, I thought, that's me. The next degree over was a woman protecting the chickens from the hawks. I think that makes no sense to me, but maybe for me personally. But you can rectify charts, and I've done that many times. I'm not sure when I was born, Cassandra. Take a look at her. Oh, okay, she's definitely, I think, born around 3 p.m., so she might be a Scorpio rising or something. And then we use the rectification of the degrees. So there's another tool that people use these degrees for.
I'm getting the sense that you and most great astrologers are also very intuitive. One might say psychic or channeling. Or how do you view those things in terms of your readings and your interpretations? How much of it is technical astrology and how much of it is connection and intuition and downloading?
Great question. And I believe, just like in any profession, we are our chart. I have in my chart Sun conjunct Neptune, and I have a Pisces Mars. That's the handle of my bucket, my 6th house of work. So I've always been a little on the spacey side, Amanda. I've always had a lot of intuition following me. So I love the intuitive techniques. I think that's one of the reasons why the Sabian symbols were calling to me. I have had a lot of training down at the Spiritualist Center in mediumship and psychic abilities. I've sat in many circles. I even integrate astrology with psychic development. But having said that, everyone has their incredible gifts. I mean, if someone is more fiery and airy, they might be very specific with doing the technical parts of the astrology. At the end of the day, it's all about the client and helping the person. So I totally agree with you. Astrology is this template, and it evokes within anyone, whether they be a technical astrologer or not, little bits of intuition. The numinous, the soul, is speaking to us through these glyphs on the chart. And I'm sure every astrologer has beautiful examples, and I have countless because I see a lot of people. But if you look at, for example, let me give you an example. Someone has, I don't know, Saturn opposing Saturn. So we know Saturn's in Pisces now, and Saturn is their natal Saturn is in Virgo. And then I would look at their chart and I go, I think maybe it's time for you to totally change your job into more of a people serving situation, as opposed to being an accountant. I mean, you could serve people as an accountant, Virgo and Virgo Saturn, but you might want to work more in human services or something like that. And I will say something like this, and the person will say, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about changing everything. And that's often a time in our lives when we navigate what the Saturn return was at age 30-ish or age 60-ish, and that 15 years later, we have that opposition. But the astrologers sometimes can put their neck out and say, and not feel ashamed or worried or insecure, maybe you should do that. And that's the astrology speaking to the astrologer, I think.
How long did it take you to get to a point where you could trust that? Where you would have these intuitive hits and you went with it? Did that take a long time for you to hone and get that confidence? Or did you just kind of start doing that and you got the feedback and then it just gave you more confidence?
Another great question. Astrology helped. When Neptune went into Pisces, it triggered my chart and it was a lot easier.
Ooh.
I'll be honest with you. When I first started reading, the publisher of the paper from which I was working from and writing my column said, you got to get out there and don't even use astrology. Just use your psychic intuition. I got panicky. I go, I can't do that. I need my astrology. And she says, oh, no, you can do it. Well, I didn't believe her. And I was nervous because I'm a Virgo moon. I'm very responsible to what comes out of this mouth. Wouldn't always know it, but I am. And insecure sometimes. But it was amazing. When Neptune in 2012, 2011 went into Pisces, my whole chart lit up and all of a sudden the intuition was easier. It was just easier.
Wow.
I think we should all look at our charts and know if you look at your chart, you say, oh, I'm not psychic, or I can't understand astrology, or I'm not this, I'm not that. Just wait to the next transit, because you might all of a sudden open up in a new way to this beautiful material.
So true. Oh, I love that. Cassandra, so if somebody's out there going, God, I'm so excited, I want to get started. You've given us some great books that people can get. You have referred us even to Google. You can go Google these things and get people's interpretations of it. Is there any, and you said to start with the big three, is there anything else you would want to say to students out there who are excited that this is piquing their curiosity and they want to get started?
When you first learn astrology, you start, memorizing. Sometimes people use flashcards or they practice writing the glyphs. Maybe really practice reflecting and journaling the big three of your chart. And another thing is look up the Sabian symbol of the sun every day. When you're waking up, what's the symbol for the sun? Like, for example, we have a beautiful summer solstice coming up, right? Every summer solstice, we have the same degree, and that is a furled and unfurled flag is being displayed from a vessel. So the beginning of summer is like one flag comes up, one flag comes down. It's the changing of the guard, and it means adaptability. So go back to other summer solstices or winter solstices. Those 4 quarters of the year are very profound, and the Sabian symbols all talk about that. The symbols are different. So I would do that, friends. Pick a symbol for the day. And if you are familiar with progressions in your chart, track your moon's movement. I will be sharing, like I said, a lot of my material on taking these 360 degrees and seeing that there's a narrative that runs in your own chart and how you can do that. Are you more of a spiritual, creative, constructive person? These things, I'll just serve as a guide. I don't know all the answers ever, but I've love working with these for people.
Amazing. Okay. This has been so much fun. It's the beginning with Cassandra. We're going to have many more opportunities to connect with her, but thank you so much for being here for this introduction, for this deep dive on Sabian symbols. You've given us so much to work with. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with just in general as they're integrating this information and learning more and more about themselves?
At the end of the day, thank you, Amanda, for that. At the end of the day, Danny Rudyard talked about this. He imagined that our planets, those things that circle suns and stars throughout the universe, are circular. At the end of the day, the 360 degrees kind of build this matrix of the creator's, he talked about the creator's mind. That I think astrology and the Sabian symbols, but all of this proves that creation is alive and well, and the universe has our back. To me, that's the most incredible message, that the divine, whatever you call it, is smart, and we can tap into this matrix.
That resonates so deeply. And that was my experience of my first reading. I remember just getting up from the table at one point going, this is the most clear evidence of an intelligence that is so far beyond my comprehension. It must be what people are calling God, because
right.
Wow. Like, how is all of that contained in that one little piece of paper? Right.
Exactly.
So, yes.
And to me, that's the most important message with all of this.
Right. Right. Oh my gosh. I love that so much. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm so glad that we ran into each other in Los Angeles. And now I get to introduce you to all of my friends at Astrology Hub, and we get to learn more and more from you. So thank you so much for all the years that you have spent dedicating yourself to this study, to this adventure, to understanding the astrology, to pursuing your own curiosity and going deep into these different facets of astrology and of yourself. Because now you get to be here sharing all that with us. And I'm so grateful.
I'm thrilled, Amanda. You're so awesome.
Okay. And thanks to all of you. Thank you for your curiosity. I said it in the beginning. I'll say it again. It's because of you and your enthusiasm for astrology and your desire to know yourself, know the universe, know your connection to it all that enables us to do this work. So thank you for that. And it also, I always think if everybody in the world was asking these questions and exploring the truth of who they are and what they're here to do, we'd live in a very different world. So the fact that you're out there doing that is already so amazing. So thank you for doing that. And I can't wait to connect with you on the next episode. If you haven't already, go get yourself signed up for the free Cosmic Insider. That will automatically enter you into our monthly raffle, astrologyhub.com/insider. And we'll look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Thank you for making astrology a part of your life. See you soon, everyone.